After studying this module, you shall be able to understand different meanings of development, understand the principles that guide the study of development, understand important concepts and key issues within the contemporary study of human development. Introduction. Lifespan developmental psychology is the field of psychology which involves the examination of both constancy and change in human behavior across the entire lifespan, that is, from conception to death. Developmental change may occur as a result of genetically controlled processes known as maturation or as a result of environmental factors and learning, but most commonly involves an interaction between the two. It may also occur as a result of human nature and their ability to learn from the environment. Developmental psychologists are concerned with diverse issues ranging from the growth of motor skills in the infant to the gains and losses observed in the intellectual functioning of the elderly. The goal of study in developmental psychology is to further our knowledge about how development evolves over the entire lifespan, developing a knowledge of the general principles of development and the differences and similarities in development across individuals. Defining development. The most commonly used definition refers to development as patterns of change over time which begin at conception and continue throughout the lifespan. The domains of development. The study of development is interdisciplinary. Development occurs in different domains. Physical development, changes in body size, proportions, appearances, and the functioning of various body systems, brain development, perceptual and motor capacities, and physical health. Cognitive development, development of a wide variety of thought processes, intellectual abilities including attention, memory, academic and everyday knowledge, problem solving, imagination, creativity, and the unique human capacity to represent the world through language. Emotional and social development, development of emotional communication, self-understanding, ability to manage one's feelings, knowledge about other people, interpersonal skills, friendships, intimate relationships, and moral reasoning and behavior. While some developmental psychologists restrict the notion of development to changes which lead to qualitative reorganizations in the structure of a behavior, skill, or ability. For example, Werner argued that development refers only to changes which increase the organization of functioning within a domain. Werner believed that development consisted of two processes, integration and differentiation. Integration refers to the idea that development consists of the integration of more basic, previously acquired behaviors into new, higher level structures. Differentiation refers to the idea that development also involves the progressive ability to make more distinctions among things, for example, learning to adjust one's grasp to pick up small objects, which requires the use of fingers and fine motor control, versus larger objects which only require closing the hand around the object and less fine motor control. However, this view is by no means the only viewpoint. There are others who argue that anything which evidences change over time is relevant to the study of development. Principles of life development. Balls outlined a set of principles for study of human development within a lifespan frame. He contends that these principles or family of beliefs, as he calls them, specify a lucid view of the nature of development. Lifespan approach is the application of these beliefs. Following are the principles given by Balls. First, development is lifelong. This belief has two separate aspects. First, the potential for development extends across the entire lifespan. There is no assumption that the life course must reach a plateau or decline during adulthood and old age. Second, development may involve processes which are not present at birth but emerge throughout the lifespan. Development is also multidimensional. Multidimensionality refers to the fact that development cannot be described by a single criterion such as increases or decreases in behavior. The principle of multidirectionality maintains that there is no single normal path that development must or should take. In other words, healthy developmental outcomes are achieved in a wide variety of ways. Development is multidirectional. It is often comprised of multiple abilities which take different directions, showing different types of change or constancy. Development is the belief that development involves both gains and losses. According to Balls, any developmental process involves aspects of growth and decline. For example, formal schooling increases a child's knowledge base and develops their cognitive abilities, but also restricts their creativity as they learn to follow rules defined by others. These two aspects of growth and decline need not occur in equal strength, and moreover, the balance between gains and losses can change with time. Development is plastic. Plasticity refers to the within person variability which is possible for a particular behavior or development. For example, infants who have a hemisphere of the brain removed shortly after birth as a treatment for epilepsy, for example, can recover the functions associated with that hemisphere as the brain reorganizes itself and the remaining hemisphere takes over those functions. A key part of the research agenda in developmental psychology is to understand the nature and limits of plasticity in various domains of functioning. Development is also situated in context and in history. Development varies across the different contexts in which we live our lives. For example, social and rural environments are associated with different sets of factors which have the potential to impact on development. Understanding how development differs for individuals within these two settings requires an understanding of the different contexts. Development is also historically situated. That is, the historical time period in which we grow up affects our development. Developmental psychology is multidisciplinary. That is, the sources of age-related changes do not lie within the province of any one discipline. For example, psychological methodologies may not be appropriate for understanding factors that are sociological in nature. Rather, an understanding of human development will be achieved only by research conducted from the perspective of disciplines such as sociology, linguistics, anthropology, and computer science. Themes and issues. A number of major themes have emerged in the study of development, which are recurrent across the various domains of study. One is continuity and discontinuity. An important question which continually confronts the researcher in the study of child development is how to best characterize the nature of developmental change. There are two contrasting positions on developmental change. According to those who hold to the first position, development is best viewed as a continuous process. It does not involve distinct stages, but rather there is a gradual accumulation of a behavior, skill, or knowledge. On this model, development proceeds in a smooth and orderly fashion, with each change building on previous abilities. In contrast, those who hold to the second view would suggest that developmental change is best characterized as discontinuous in nature. These theories suggest that behaviors or skills often change qualitatively across time and that new organizations of behaviors, skills, or knowledge emerge in a rather abrupt or discrete fashion. Central to the discontinuous views of development is the idea that development involves discrete stages. An individual must accomplish one task at every stage before progressing to the next stage. The movement to a new stage of development means that a qualitative reorganization of previous knowledge or behavior has taken place. For example, Piaget believed that between 7 to 11 years, children's thinking could be described as concrete in that it is closely tied to the nature of the objects with which they interact. In contrast, during adolescence, thinking becomes more abstract. It is less bound to particular objects and takes into account the possible or hypothetical. It could be clear that these two positions of development viewed as a continuous process or as a discontinuous process, describe development in quite different ways, ways that on the surface are seemingly difficult to reconcile with one another. Siegler has argued that whether a particular aspect of development appears to be continuous or discontinuous in nature depends largely on how we choose to examine development. When we examine the change in a given behavior at large intervals, for example yearly, or in different age groups such as 4-year-olds and 8-year-olds, development will tend to look very discontinuous or stage-like. If we plotted the level of development of some skill over time, the developmental function might look like a staircase with periods of little change followed by abrupt shifts in the level of performance. In contrast, if we were to examine the behavior more closely at smaller intervals, we might find that development took on a much more continuous character. That is, increases in the level of performance would be seen to occur gradually with no abrupt shifts. We would also find that there is a great variability in the methods or strategies that children use to solve problems. Siegler's own work on children's learning in the domain of mathematics shows that children often use a variety of strategies in their attempts to learn how to add together two numbers. Because learning to decide which strategies work best takes some time, the shifts between the use of different strategies is a gradual process. If we plotted the development of strategy used for addition problems, Siegler claims we would obtain a picture quite different from the staircase model just described. Instead, we would see that he calls overlapping waves of development. The waves occur as the variability in strategy use gradually peaks and declines, while the overlap between the waves reflects the fact that children use multiple strategies at the same time. Sternberg and Ogakaki have suggested that attempt to characterize development as uniformly continuous or discontinuous has the appearance of an unanswerable question being based on a false presumption. Stability and change. Another issue which is of importance to developmental psychologists is the issue of stability versus change. Studies of children have often revealed impressive stability over time in aspects of development such as the attachment bond to their parents or in personality. Of course, there is evidence which suggests a contrary view that change is both possible and indeed is likely under the appropriate conditions. For example, research on children's temperament raises the possibility that our inherited predispositions to react emotionally in certain ways can be altered by our environment, particularly by the attitudes and behaviors of their caregivers. An important aspect of the debate on stability versus change has to do with the degree to which early experiences play a formative role in our later development. Freud was one of the first psychologists to emphasize the critical nature of our early experiences for our later development. In Freud's view, how we resolve sexual and aggressive urges is strongly tied to the nature of our personality as adults. Similarly, Erik Erikson believed that how we dealt with key issues such as development of a warm, caring relationship with our parents or the ability to think and act autonomously were important determinants of later developments. These early theories of human development as well as a great deal of later research suggest that there is a highly stable quality to our development and that early experience is crucial to this stability. In contrast to this position, researchers who have focused on adult development, such as Baltz, have emphasized that we are malleable throughout the lifespan and that later experiences are very important to whether development shows stability or plasticity. Baltz has argued that too little attention has been focused on the aspects of development and that support change and has proposed a methodology for the study of behavior across the lifespan which tests the potential for change in behavior. Nature versus nurture debate. Of all the issues which have aroused debate within the study of child development and developmental psychology, The nature versus nurture issue, which concerns the relative degree to which heredity and learning affect functioning, has generated the most controversy by far. This may be due to the fact that, unlike the other debates we have discussed, the nature versus nurture questions focus on the question of the best explanation for how development takes place. The issue is usually posed as a debate between two positions regarding the relative roles of biological and environmental factors in development. Nature refers to the position that our genetic inheritance through the process of heredity is the primary influence on development. In contrast, nurture refers to the position that the environment is primarily responsible for development. In developmental psychology's past, extreme positions have been taken on the nature-nurture debate. Gesell was a strong advocate of the position that the course of our development was largely dictated by genetic factors. Our genetic heritage specifies the set of biological processes which determine the patterns of growth that we observe, which Gesell referred to as maturation. Simply put, maturation is the sequence of growth which is specified and controlled by our genes. Gesell used studies of identical twins to study how experience and maturation lead to development. His studies compared twins given special experience learning a particular skill to the other twins who was given no such experience. Gesell's findings consistently showed that the acquisition of the behaviors was relatively unaffected by the special training. That is, the untrained twin tended to acquire the behavior as quickly as the trained twin. In contrast to Gesell's maturationist position, Watson argued for the dominance of the environment on the children's development. Watson believed that the genetic factors place no limits on how environments could shape the course of children's development. Watson was famous for his boast that, given the ability to manipulate the environment to his own standards, he could shape the development of any child. Give me a dozen healthy infants, well-formed, and my own specified world to bring them up in, and I'll guarantee to take anyone at random and train him to become any type of specialist I might select, that is, doctor, lawyer, artist, merchant chief, and yes, even beggar man and thief, regardless of his talents, penchants, tendencies, abilities, vocations, and race of his ancestors. While Watson was never able to make good on his boast, he did show how environmental experiences played a role in shaping children's behavior through the processes of classical conditioning, a type of learning in which a stimulus can come to evoke a response after the repeated pairing of the two stimuli. The positions held by Gesell and Watson regarding the relative roles of maturation and environment on development are essentially extremist positions which are no longer supported in light of current research on child development. Today, most developmental psychologists recognize that nature and nurture both play an important role in development. Rather than discussing nature versus nurture, we commonly talk about the interaction between nature and nurture. However, it is argued by Elmans et al. That future research needs to specify exactly how nature and nurture interact to produce development if any interactionist position is to be anything other than lip service to the debate. One way we can approach the interaction between nature and nurture is through an examination of the extent to which our biological programming can be altered by environmental influences. The biologist Waddington used the term canalization to refer to this phenomena. In other words, in the genetic influence on a particular development, robust across varied environments, or does it show susceptibility to change? Highly canalized behaviors are relatively unaltered by changes in environment. Our biology is continuously influenced by our environment, our behavior, and our activity. At the same time, our experience of our environment is continuously influenced by our biological inheritance. Trying to divide the causes of behavior into parts assignable to nature and parts assignable to nurture is futile. Nature and nurture are engaged in a continuous and reciprocal interaction. The attempt to separate their influences, as has been done in the past, leads to an oversimplified and incomplete picture of human development. So, we summarize it as follows. Developmental psychology is the scientific study of changes that occur in human beings over the course of their life. The field includes development over lifespan, from infancy to adolescence, adult development, and aging. Secondly, this field examines change across a broad range of topics, including motor skills and other psychophysiological processes, cognitive development involving areas such as problem solving, moral understanding, and conceptual understanding, language acquisition, social, personality, and emotional development, and self concept and identity formation. Developmental psychology examines issues such as the extent of development through gradual accumulation of knowledge versus stage-like development, and the extent to which children are born with innate mental structures versus learning through experience. Many researchers are interested in the interaction between personal characteristics, the individual's behavior, and environmental factors, including social context and their impact on development. Others take a more narrowly focused approach.
The various theoretical perspectives on human development are: 1. Psychoanalytical theories, which include Freud's psychosexual stages of development, Erikson's psychosocial theory. 2. Cognitive theory, which includes Piaget's theory of cognitive development. 3. Socio-Cultural theory, which includes Vygotsky's sociocultural theory. 4. Contextual theory, which includes Bronfenbrenner's ecological theory of development. Freud believed that there are three main structures of personality, that is, id, ego, and superego. The id consists of impulses, emotions, and desires. Its demands are impractical, and it demands instant gratification of its desires. To keep the id into check, ego develops. Ego is practical aspect of the personality and mediates between the desires of id and the reality. Superego is the final structure of the personality, and it is the bearer of the sense of duty and responsibility. Ego and superego develop as the individual progresses through psychosexual stages of development. Freud's five psychosexual stages of development are: Stage 1 is oral, birth to 2 years. In this stage, infants achieve gratification through oral activities such as feeding, thumb sucking, and babbling. Stage 2 is anal, 2 to 3 years. In this stage, child learns to respond to some of the demands of the society such as bowel and bladder control. Stage 3 is phallic, 3 to 7 years. In this stage, the child learns to realize the difference between males and females and become aware of his sexuality. Stage 4 is latency, 7 to 11 years. In this stage, the child continues his or her development, but sexual urges are relatively quiet. Stage 5 is genital, 11 to adult. In this stage, the growing adolescent shakes off old discrepancies and learns to deal maturely with the opposite sex. Freud's five psychosexual stages of development are: Stage 1 is oral, birth to 2 years. In this stage, Erikson emphasized that development happens throughout lifespan. He highlighted stages of development of healthy personality. Children's personalities develop in response to their social environment. The same is true of their skills for social interaction. Erikson proposes 8 stages of development. Each stage is characterized by a social conflict. Social and personal resolution of the conflict is mandatory to ascend to the next stage. Context plays an integral role in the lifespan of an individual's development. The role of context can be understood in the stages as follows. Stage 1: Trust versus mistrust. During the first 18 months of life, trust develops. Depending upon their interaction with the external environment, infant either learns to trust or mistrust the environment. Stage 2: Autonomy versus shame and doubt. Between 18 months and 3 years of age, the toddler gains self-control and starts to become self-sufficient by using new motor and mental skills. A supportive environment for performing routine activities like toileting, dressing, and eating results in autonomy, whereas overprotection or lack of adequate activities results in self-doubt and shame. Stage 3: Initiative versus guilt. Between 3 and 5 years of age, the child has developed several skills and is ready to learn to deal with the environment constructively. It discovers how the world works and realizes its capacity to have an effect on the world, whereas discouragement and criticism at this stage develops a sense of incompetence in the child. Stage 4: Industry versus inferiority. This stage between 6 and 12 years of age is characterized by a major crisis. Realistic expectation and goals at this stage leads to an enriched sense of self, whereas criticism, discouragement, or unrealistic expectation leads to the feeling of incompetence and insecurity. Stage 5: Identity versus role confusion. This stage of early adolescence is characterized by rapid body growth and sexual maturation. Peer acceptance takes central space during this stage, and frequent conflicts arise due to inconsistent opinions of peers and society. Stage 6: Intimacy versus isolation. This stage of late adolescence, according to Erikson, is crucial because the individual accepts himself or herself and goes on to accept others by fusing his or her personality with others. Stage 7: Generativity versus self absorption. At this stage of adulthood, an individual focuses on providing the wisdom, virtues, joys, and skills accumulated to the next generation and shows more interest in the next generation than his own problems. Failure leads to inability to accept one's declining mental and physical state as middle age approaches. Stage 8: Integrity versus despair. Stage ranging from mature adult and old age. And most important event at this stage is coming to accept one's whole life. Accepting responsibility for your life and being able to undo the past and achieve satisfaction with self is essential. The inability to do this results in a feeling of despair. Piaget highlighted that cognitive development occurs through three interrelated processes of organization, adaptation, and equilibration. 1. Organization refers to the integration of knowledge to make sense of the environment. 2. Adaptation refers to the adjustment to new information about the environment through complementary processes of assimilation and accommodation. Assimilation refers to the incorporation of new information into an existing cognitive structure. Accommodation refers to the change in existing cognitive structure to include new information. 3. Equilibration refers to the tendency to strive for equilibrium among and within the existing cognitive element and the outside world. According to Piaget's theory of cognitive development, development occurs through following stages. 1. Sensory motor stage. The child begins to interact with the environment. 2. Pre-operational stage. The child begins to represent the world symbolically. 3. Concrete operational stage. The child learns rules such as conservation. 4. Formal operational stage. The adolescent can transcend the concrete situation and think about the future. Like Piaget, Vygotsky also believed that children learn through experience. Social and cultural interaction with parents, peers, and others help children learn customs, values, beliefs, and language of their culture. Vygotsky introduced the concept of private speech or self talk. He believed that language plays a very important role in cognitive development. After developing language, children engage in self talk to help them guide their activity and develop thinking. Initially, language and thought develop independently, but they gradually merge and change over time. Adults and parents' scaffolding of child's behavior is vital to the overall development of the child. Yuri Bronfenbrenner, 1979, defined the ecology of human development as the scientific study of the progressive mutual accommodation between an active, growing human being and the changing properties of the immediate settings in which the developing person lives, as this process is affected by relations between those settings and by the larger contexts in which the settings are embedded. Bronfenbrenner emphasized the role of environment in human development. Various environmental contexts illustrated by Bronfenbrenner are microsystem, one's family, school, neighborhood, and peers; the mesosystem, interaction among various microsystems; the exosystem, social settings in which the individual does not play an active role but is affected by its decisions; the macrosystem, the culture in which one exists; and the chronosystem, the socio-historical events of one's lifetime. Let us summarize what we have learned in this module. Psychoanalytical perspective of human development asserts 1. Freud's psychosexual stages of development. Freud believed that there are three main structures to personality: id, ego, and the superego. 2. Erikson's psychosocial theory. He emphasized that development happens throughout the lifespan. He highlighted 8 stages of development of healthy personality. 3. Piaget's theory of cognitive development highlighted that cognitive development occurs through three interrelated processes: organization, adaptation, and equilibration. 4. According to Vygotsky's socio-cultural theory, children learn through experience. He introduced the concept of private speech or self-talk. He believed that language plays a very important role in cognitive development. 5. Bronfenbrenner's ecological theory of development defined the ecology of human development. It offers newer perspectives on development and is particularly relevant to the study of motor behavior.